The book of Joshua, session number 31. Chapter 6 of Joshua. We ended with verse 16. But I just want to go back to the walking. To understand this walking around Jericho. The word walk in Hebrew is halak. And the word for the way on which you walk is halakha. Halakha. And to walk on the way, to have your halakha, your walking, to have your halakha on the halach of Yahuwah, is to walk your whole life, to live your life, to think and eat and live and walk and action and everything. Your whole heart, your mind, your brain, your soul, to have your halakha in Yahuwah's way. It's called the halakha of Yahuwah, the way, the only way back to Yahuwah. So they walk around the city. They are silent while the world is joking and laughing and scorning and mocking. They are walking in obedience while Jericho is worshipping idols. They are walking circumcised after the Pesach, after crossing over, after circumcision, while the world is uncircumcised and stiff-necked and not cut to the heart or the flesh to carry the seal of the covenant of Abraham. They walk behind their priests, while the world has their Baal priests and their sun god leaders. They walk behind Joshua. Joshua's their leader, while the Antichrist is the world's leader. And so we can continue finding all these parallels with how Christ is the world's leader. And so we can continue finding all these parallels with how they are having their halakha, having their walk. And the priests blow the trumpets and sound the noise that prophesies what is coming upon this world, because all the prophecies are the sounding of the trumpets of the watchmen on the wall and the law and the prophets. The prophet Moses and the rest of the prophets are testifying of how this world will fall into the hands of this God after they have chosen to turn against him and follow another. And we see this all over the Bible, but especially in the climax of all times, which we find in Revelation. And isn't it amazing how the very next verse, because we read in verse 15 of Joshua 6, the seventh day they walk around 7 times, they walk. And then on the 7th day, at the 7th time, the priests will blow the trumpets, and then Joshua will say unto the people, as he said before, on the day, at the moment that I tell you that you must shout, only then must you shout. And we looked at how Yeshua is doing the same to us. So at the 7th time, on the 7th day, Joshua then said unto the people in verse 16, shout, for Yahuwah has given you the city. Now, we're going to continue and look at the parallels with Joshua 6 and Revelation 18 and 2 Peter 3 verse 10. But remember this walking, people that have their walk, their halak, on the halakha of Yahuwah, they are the ones, as we continue through the rest of the Bible, we're looking at Joshua, then we're going to look at the Bible, we're looking at Joshua, then we're going to look at Revelation, and we're going to look at 2 Peter. There are these two groups of people. And the one group of people are the ones having their halakha in God's way. And the rest of the people are part of the curse. Because at the mountain of the valley of decision, Shechem, at the Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, we had to make a choice between obedience and disobedience, because obedience brings blessing, but disobedience brings curse. So verse 17 is all about the city shall be accursed. And we're going to read in verse 24 how the city will be burnt with fire. And we're going to discuss this in detail. But before we look at what's going to happen to the world and to those who eat from the tree of knowledge and who refuses to acknowledge the God from the tree of life, and who refuse to repent and turn back to God, those who have their halakha in their own ways. Because there are many ways that looks right to man, but the end thereof is death. There's only one way, the Torah that became flesh way, for us to walk on. And here I want to read with you a couple of verses. The first one is Psalm. Let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 81, verse 13. Chapter 81, verse 13. Oh, that my people would have listened to me, and only if Israel had halak in my halacha, if only Israel had walked in my ways. Let's go to Zechariah 3. Let me just find Zechariah chapter 3 and verse 7. Thus says Yahuwah Tsefaot, the Lord of hosts, the captain of the heavenly army, my halacha, and if you will keep my charge, then you shall also judge my house, and you shall also keep my courts, my legal system, the court of law, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. And then he talks about the stone that is laid before Joshua. And we know the branch and the cornerstone and all these things. We can go down so many halachas. There's so many halachas for us to discuss. But here we see that God says, keep my charge, keep my commandments, walk in my ways, because it means the same thing. And when you do that and you walk around the city in obedience to me, then you will judge in my courts, and you will have places together with the rest of the Bible figures and the rest of the believers. This is the difference between walking God's way and walking other people's ways. Looking at Joshua 6 verse 3, and you shall compass the city, all you men of war, and go round the city once. This shall you do for 6 days. This is the halakha they had for 6 days. Like for 6 days we work. For 6 days they went around the city once, enduring the scorn. For 6 days they remembered the promise God gave, that every place the sole of your feet touches, even while the rest of the world is scorning you, I will give to you, wherever your feet touches. Let's look at Deuteronomy. And I hope you studied with Deuteronomy and that you fell in love with Deuteronomy, that is the book of love. Deuteronomy 19 verse 9. If you shall keep all these commandments to do them, which I command you this day, to love Yahuwah your Elohim, and to walk forever in his halacha, then shall you add 3 cities more for yourselves. Oh, isn't that nice? We have to understand the word of God. Let's go to the prophet Micah, chapter 4 and verse 2. Many nations shall come and say, come, let us go to the mountain of Yahuwah, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his halacha, and we will halach in his paths. We will walk in his paths. Beautiful. Showing us our halacha, the way in which we walk. Let's go to the New Testament. And we go to the book of Acts, chapter 3, verse 6 to 8. Then Peter said, silver and gold have I none, but such as I do have, what I do have, I give you. I give you the power in the name of Yeshua, the Messiah of the branch of Nazareth. Rise up and do what? Walk. You see the way in which we walk in obedience, silence, until he tells us now is the time to shout and to go forth straight before you and take over the city and destroy the wickedness, save Rahab, and bring her into the camp, make my camp whole again, bring my lost sheep in, and take back the covenant promised land. And Peter took up the man by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediate bones received strength. So if we're not walking in God's halacha, then we are weak and lame and sick. And we need Peter and Paul and John and the prophets and Moses with their words that they received from God to take us by the right hand, lift us up, and make our feet and ankles strong so that we can continue to rise up and walk day after day for 6 days around the city, and not eat the bread of this world, but eating the bread of God. And he leaped up, and he stood up, and he walked, and he entered into the temple, walking and leaping and jumping and praising God. How beautiful is that? How amazing to understand this walking. Let's also go to the first book of John, 1 John chapter 1, verse 6. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie, and we do not do the truth. But if we walk in the light, because he is in the light, then we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Messiah cleanses us from our sin. Let's also go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 2. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them has the light shined. So, sitting in darkness and getting up in the name of Yeshua, the Torah that became flesh, following Joshua, following the commandments God gave through Moses and Joshua, and obeying them, walking in their light, walking in the light that God gives through his word for us. We walk in that, although in silence and subjection and sometimes persecution. That is what we walk in. And as long as we walk in that, we are not walking in darkness. As long as we choose the unleavened bread walk, we will not be participating in the darkness of the rest of the world. That is why Yeshua says, it's like visiting people in prison and visiting people that's sick and healing the dead and bringing light to those who sit in darkness. It's all shadow pictures of the whole world that are slaves to the dark walk they have around the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And to come out of that and come and walk with the soldiers of God under the command of the come into the light and walk in the light. And as long as we, in 2022 and onwards, walk in the light, because your word is a light to my feet and a lamp to my path, we need to know where to walk on. We need to see the light of the Torah showing us the way. As long as we walk in obedience to his commandments, we are walking in the light, and we cannot be deceived. We can be discouraged, but we cannot be deceived, because we are walking on the right path. Obeying the Torah will keep you away from doing things that will suck you back into the darkness. That is why it's important to understand the commandments, follow them, keep them. And when this world, and even the governments of this world, want to force their new laws and stuff upon you, you know what the Torah says about all these various aspects. And you cannot participate in the rest of the world. Let them then be in darkness, but you walk in the light, because that is how you will be safeguarded against the deception of the end days. Because unfortunately, those who don't walk in light will be utterly destroyed. That is exactly what the next verse says in Joshua. We just read Joshua chapter 6, verse 15, how they walked around the city for 7 days. And then on the seventh day, they walked around 7 times. So we discussed walking, halak, to have your walk in the way, the halacha. And verse 16, then we shout. We have a time to keep quiet and a time to shout. Because if we don't raise our voice on this walk of light where we are. We shall be part of the city that will be destroyed. Verse 17. And the city shall be accursed, even the whole city, and all the people that are in there. If we jump to verse 24 of chapter 6 of Joshua, it says that they burned the whole city with fire, and all that was in it. Just like God commanded. He said, you will destroy the whole city. Only Rahab, beautiful, verse 17. Everything will be destroyed. You must burn the city and everything and everyone in it, except the silver and the gold. We'll get to that later. It's only Rahab, the harlot. She will live. She and all that are with her in her house, because she hid the messenger. She hid the spies. Because in this city of darkness and idolatry and pagan heathenism and disobedience to Torah and disregard of Torah and following whatever is right in your own heart, in this city, there's a woman that fell in love with the bridegroom of heaven. Listen to this beautiful verse in Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 3. Your lips, this is now the bridegroom that is talking about his bride. Listen how he describes his bride. Remember the whore of Jericho that fell in love with the God of Israel. And the God of Israel, out of all the millions of people that he destroyed in Canaan, he saved her because she fell in love with him. She chose him above all. And out of her loins came the messianic bloodline. But listen how he describes his bride. Your lips are like a thread of scarlet. What did she hang outside her window? A ribbon of scarlet. This sign of salvation, the true token of the nation, the true token of the bride of God, the true mark of the people of God, is this scarlet sign hanging outside a window. And listen how God sees how your lips, everyone that speaks his truth and his light, our lips are like a thread of scarlet. And this lips that speaks his truth will cause us, in the city of destruction, will cause us to be saved out from as well. Absolutely beautiful. Because the whole city will be destroyed. Let's jump to how this applies in the prophetic. Revelation chapter 18 and verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of the city of Babylon. And you know what that represents? The whore of Babylon, the false religion, the system that is seated in the throne of him that wants to usurp or take over the throne of God. Since Genesis 3, all the way through Cain, and later on Nimrod, and then the Egyptian Pharaoh, and King Saul, and even Absalom, and King Herod, and the Pharisees, and the magician, Simon the magician. There are so many aspects in, and so many true historical figures, proving to us how this system is being manipulated and used by the serpent inside and outside the people of God, inside and outside the world governments, rotten to the core, trying to pull us into their system. But God says, come out of that system. Come and walk around the city with us for 7 days during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Stop being part of the celebrations of this world, because walking with us in the light makes that relationship that God wanted in the Garden of Eden more possible with his bride. Doesn't matter if she was a harlot within a pagan system. The harlot that was supposed to be killed by stones got grace from Yeshua, and she's the one that washed his feet, and she's the one that met him. The very first person that met him when he was resurrected was this woman that fell in love with the God who created her, repented and left behind all her sins and became the one, like Yeshua said to the Pharisees, she loves me so much more than you do, because I have forgiven her so much more. So this lost wife, the whoring wife, that finds her way back to her husband, and he, as per the Torah, has to perish, he has to die, so that she can marry again. And he dies, and he rises up from death, and that is what we are looking for, to the heavenly bridal supper, the wedding of the Lamb of God, because we are represented by this people that chooses God above all, and come out of the city of harlotdom, the city of Babylon, because that city is accursed, and that city will be judged and will be burnt with fire up to the point where there is only dust left. And then Malachi 4 talks about the fact how then we will open and walk on the dust of them that has burned. Malachi chapter 4, let me read from verse 1. For behold, the day comes that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yes, and all they that do wickedly shall be stubble. In the day that comes, it shall burn them up, says Yahuwah of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I will do this. Because Jericho is to be accursed, Joshua 6 verse 17, the city shall be accursed, the city and everything that is in it. Only Rahab, whose lips scarlet, she will be saved. And verse 24, then they burned the city. And here in Malachi 4, God will burn up everything that is part of the Babylonian city. Only us who believe and fear the name of God, Yotay-Vathai, for us the Son, S-U-N, the Son of Righteousness, who is the Son, S-O-N, the Son of God, the Son of the Righteous One, he will come with healing in his wings, and we will tread on the dust of this fire that will destroy everything. That's why Malachi 4 verse 4 continues to say, remember the law of Moses. Remember the law of Moses. When this fire comes of judgment upon this whole city, the only way that we remember the light is if we remember the law of Moses. Let me end with 2 Peter, the second book of Peter. The second book of Peter, chapter 3 and verse 10 to 16. But the day of Yahuwah will come as a thief in the night. But the day of Yahuwah shall come as a thief in the night. And that's not what the church says what it means, but anyway, that's another teaching. In the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth and also the works that are therein shall be burned up, exactly as the city of Jericho is burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person do we need to be in all our holy conversation and godliness? Because we are looking forward and we are hastening and being, we are looking forward and we are hastening and being desirous that the coming of the day of God will come, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements, the sun, moon, and stars, shall melt with a fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to the promise, because we walk around the city for 7 days, we keep unleavened bread, we keep the 7th day Sabbath, we remember the law of Moses, we have come out of Babylon and out of Jericho and out of Egypt, we understand the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we look for the new heaven and the new earth and the new Jerusalem, wherein dwells righteousness. Therefore, beloved, seeing that you look for such things, be diligent that you may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless, like a bride, on account that the long suffering of our God is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul also, the wisdom that was given unto him has written to you. And then Peter continues to explain how the church will twist Paul's words. But here Peter also, like the prophet Malachi, talks about the fire in the end days and how everything will be destroyed. And this is exactly how Jericho was destroyed. But within the walls of Jericho, we find the harlot Rahab. Let's stop here for today, and we'll talk about the accursed things. We'll start with the accursed things tomorrow, which will open a bit of a can of worms in the world government system, the way that you may